All right, so here's the workspace in Photoshop. Now, up here it says File. On my screen up there it's kind of blocked, but you're looking for File. So if you click on File, then you can go Open. File, Open. But that's like every program pretty much, right? So you're going to open a picture in Photoshop. So let's find one that we can grab and put into Photoshop. So let's say we put in this one. All right, so this is a cloud picture. Now, what you see is, I'm going to get rid of this and get rid of this. So what you see at the top here is this, where it goes up here, we call this nesting or docking at the top. So all of your pictures, if you put more, will be up here and you'll see the images of them. If you want to get rid of that, all you do is click and drag it and get rid of it. Okay? And then you can move it down if you don't want it docked up there. If you want to dock, you just pull it back up. These are little bars, or the top of the window can be moved anywhere. And you can also change, of course, the size of it by grabbing a corner and doing something like that. Now, things I want you to know: how to make the image inside here, what you're looking at, bigger or smaller. Use Control plus or Control minus on your keyboard. Control plus or Control minus on your keyboard. Okay? That's what will change the look of your picture. Not the actual size of it, but the look of it. Now, one of the things that Photoshop is made to do is to have the mouse in one hand and your other hand on the keyboard. It's made to do that. So I'm going to show you a lot of keyboard shortcuts, just like that one, in order to resize things. Okay? Control plus makes it bigger. Control minus makes it smaller. All right? So we want to make it maybe about that size. So I have this picture here. Now, I'm going to be able to do adjustments to them, but I want to show you some things in here. What you always want to do up at the top here is a little thing that says Window. I want you to click on the window, and I always want two windows open, at least two. That's the Layers palette that's already open here and the History palette. Always have the History and Layers palettes open. Okay? So now, when I click on that, here's my history. And my layers should be down here. There's my Layers palette and my History palette. Okay? So what that is, the layers is what I told you that Photoshop is based on. That's what it's based on. When we go into this on history, it'll start showing me every move I make in Photoshop here. It'll have them all listed. So I can go back or forward if I don't like what I've done, or like when I come to check your work, I can go back and forth on your history and see where something might have gone wrong and be able to fix it very easily. And that happens a lot. So having those windows open are very, very helpful. The layers has to be open. That's critical. So those are the two that I care about being open right now. So the first thing we need to know is that over here, this is called the toolbar. This is called the toolbar. And it has a whole bunch of little icons on it. We're going to learn what many of these icons are. In Photoshop, one of the things that you need to know is that there are a bunch of different ways to do the same thing in Photoshop. I'm going to show you generally 2 or 3 ways to do it. And you can choose, or I'll tell you that I want something done a specific way. Depends on what it is. But these are all different tools. If you take your mouse cursor and hover over it, it tells you what it is. Lasso tool, the rectangular marquee tool, the crop tool, which we're going to use today. This is the eyedropper. This is the brush. This is the spot healing brush. This is the clone stamp. So you can hover over them and it tells you what it does. Okay, just by moving it. Now, there's also you see little drop-down menu, little corner here that has an arrow. That tells you that there's a drop-down menu behind that. So if you right-click on these, there's other things behind them. There are other things behind them. One of the things about Photoshop is, even though I've been doing it for, 25 years, long time, since it came out, I don't know everything about Photoshop. I don't know anybody who does. There's so much in here, it's so in-depth and has so much going on that not everybody can know everything. And you don't need to. To be able to make really nice pictures and work at things, you don't need to know what everything is. But you're going to learn quite a bit about what to do in these. So those are the different tools that we need to work with here, okay? So Now, the first thing I do in any picture is I want to crop it. That's the very first thing we do to any picture is crop it. Before we do anything else, we crop it. Before we do anything else, we crop it. So that is this little icon here. And these icons are based on real life. Like the spot healing brush is a Band-Aid. The eyedropper tool looks like an eyedropper. It takes color from a specific area. The brush looks like a brush, etc. And some of the other tools came from stuff in the darkroom, like the dodging and burning tools. But the crop tool, like in the old Stone Age when I was doing journalism and newspapers in my high school, we had two L-shaped pieces of cardboard that we used to crop. And that's what this is showing you, that same thing. So when I click on this, you'll see that there are little handles in every corner, okay, and in the middle. The only thing we care about is those little handles, and that's how we move the cropping guide. So if I want to crop out, let's say I want to crop out the whole bottom here, which I wouldn't want to do, but let's say I did. I just take that little guy and move this up. Why it's not moving, I have no idea. Come on, baby. Okay. That was weird. I'm going to escape from that. Hold on. Don't know why I did that. So I'm going to cancel. Wow, you're having fun there. All right, go back to that and then... Why are you giving me so much grief? All right, so we're going to move this, and we can move it anywhere we want. A little bit, a lot. Sometimes in cropping, many times in cropping, the tiniest movement can make a huge difference in how your picture looks. So I can say, you know what, if I crop it like this, I don't like losing those clouds. So I'm going to keep those clouds in, and maybe I'll crop a little from the top. So I can come in a little here, and I go, okay, that's not so bad. Maybe I just want to leave that one in or that one in. So then once that's done, here's the little thing that you can just cancel it, or you can click enter and it applies it. So now you can see in my history palette that right here there was open and then there's crop. Okay? So if I want to go back in a step, I can go back to here and see what it was before it was cropped, and here it is after it's cropped. Okay? So I can do that very easily. And check out what I did. And so we have now that we've cropped it. Okay? For every picture that we do now, we're going to do two things to start with. Two things here. So I want to have my layers palette here. There's a bunch of little things if you hover over here that will tell you what they do also. But I want you to go to this little thing that's a circle that's half black and half white, or half white and half black, like blocked out. And it's called a fill or adjustment layer. And this is what we're talking about with Photoshop having layers. Okay? So I'm going to click on that, and now you'll see that I have a drop-down menu with a bunch of choices here. The first one that I want to click on is levels. And I'm going to talk to you about levels here. I'm going to pull that up first. You can click here and you can see the levels palette, which should be somewhere here. Wherever you went. There it is. All right, so here's the properties. Get rid of that. Here's the properties, okay? This is called a histogram. You need to know what this is. The histogram is the distribution of pixels in an image from your shadow pixels to your midtones to your highlights, okay? So this is, you've seen histograms before, or you've seen these graph kind of things before. So there is right here a little dark arrow. So if you look up here real quick for 1 second. Okay, stop writing for 1 second and just look right here. There is a dark arrow. In the middle is a gray arrow. On the right-hand side is a white arrow. This is the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. All pictures have highlights, midtones, and shadows. Highlights are the light areas, midtones are the medium tones areas, and the shadow areas are the black or dark areas. Okay? When the histogram has this sort of flat line here and a flat line here, that means that there are almost no pixels in that area. Not always will you be able to adjust your levels, but many times you will, and it will help you identify right away things you need to make adjustments on. So the first thing we do is we take that little slider. So here I'm going to take the little black slider. I'll move this over so you can see. And I'm going to move it over till it touches the beginning of the histogram. It gets past these flat pixels. Move it over here. And why are you not showing me that? Hold on one sec here. I don't know why my computer is acting so weird today. Because that's not on. Alright, let's go back. My computer is just not happy today. Alright, let's start back over so we can see it. Alright, so because on this layer, this is the levels layer, the eyeball was off, I can turn the layer on and off. And I'll show you that in a minute, but that's why it wasn't working. So if I come over here now, and I take this little guy on the histogram, and I move it past those flat pixels that have nothing in them to the start of the histogram. Did you see how much richer this picture became? Really good, right? So now here on the highlight slider, I'm going to do the same and move it in to touch the histogram there. So you can see now we got a little bit more contrast, we got a little bit more life in the picture. So if I now take this and move this, turn the eyeball on and off on the layers, you can see the difference in that picture. It's lots better, huh? Okay, so that's the first adjustment we want to do, is levels. We do crop, and then the levels is the first adjustment every time. Crop, and then levels. Now, in this little yin-yang looking symbol again, I'm going to do another adjustment layer called brightness and contrast. So I'm going to go to brightness and contrast right now. Now I get this other menu that comes up, and it shows me two sliders, a brightness slider and a contrast slider. And in the middle is where it is nothing, okay? So right now I think I want to take the brightness down a little to make it even richer. So I'm going to come and bring that down. Okay, and you see how it darkens up a little, and maybe take the contrast up or down. I can look at this, and you know it's not making a huge difference on this one. Okay, so I can take that contrast up and make it a little richer. If we show the before and the after, didn't hardly do anything on this one. Okay, so maybe that didn't need to be an adjustment, but we still can keep it there. Now, if I decide that later I need to remake that adjustment, I decide that I want to go back into my brightness and contrast. I don't go back to the yin-yang symbol and do another layer. I just click right here on this icon, and it'll pop back up, and I can adjust it and say, oh, you know what? I don't really like what that looks like, so I'm going to make it darker. And I'm going to make the contrast lighter, or more contrast. And that's way too dark, so I'm going to bump it up a little here. And now I come over here, and I can pop it and show you the difference on the brightness and contrast. I don't know why it's taken so long for my computer to catch up. But I decide, that's still a little dark. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to brighten that up a little. All I have to do is go back to here. I don't need to create another new layer. Now, if I click on these layers and turn everything off, I can get back to our original, which is down here on the background layer, and see what that looks like. So I click this off, and that's our original. When we go to levels, we've fixed a lot of stuff in there. Now we made it much better. Much better. Now, I'm ready to save this. So I go File, Save As. File, Save As. Do not do File, Save, ever. Do File, Save As. File, Save As. So I'm going to save it here as a TIFF. Okay, it already came up to that, and let's call it something else. Let's just call it Pretty Clouds. Okay, so I'm going to save that and say OK. Don't adjust anything in here, just say OK on the TIFF. Always say that. So now if I go back to that folder where those are, which was here, I see that I have both because I rechanged the name. But now I can see it says Pretty Clouds TIFF. Okay. Now that's because I took from here already a TIFF. So let's say we open this one in Photoshop, and it's a JPEG. It's going to pop it in here. It's going to pop it in together. So if I want to separate it, all I do is pull it out by pulling up here on that top bar by the number. So here's a fox. Okay, so what's the very first thing that I'm going to do? What do you guys say? crop it. Okay, the very first thing I'm going to do is crop it. So I'm going to take the cropping guide here and maybe take away from this side so there's more room at the front of him by his nose than his tail. Maybe I don't need all that stuff at the top, so I can come in like so, and then I'll hit enter, and I've cropped him. So that's better. Now the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to levels. Going to an adjustment layer here, and I'm going to levels. So I click on levels. I find the properties here. Now look at how different this one looks. So this is a weird histogram when it's shaped all like this. Very weird, right? But now I see there's a flat line here on the highlights. So I'm going to open those up. And I don't know why it takes so long to show what it's doing. There we go. See how we brightened that picture up tremendously by that? Okay? So then the second thing I do is what? Okay, so I'm going to click on the adjustment layer again, go to brightness and contrast, because he looks dark, doesn't he? So here I'm going to brighten him up and take the contrast down. I don't know why it's taking forever for my computer to catch up. It's super annoying. Give it a second. All right. So I've taken that contrast down because it's super contrasty already, and maybe there, and come down even more and get rid of some of that contrast. And you can see here the before and the after on that. So I get more detail on him. So if I click that off and that off, you can see there's a huge difference in that picture, right? We've lightened it up and made it much better. Now I want to save this. This is a JPEG, 002.jpg. I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save it as a TIFF. It's already at a TIFF here. I can rename it now, so maybe I'll rename it Fox, and I say Save, and OK. Now when I go back to that folder, you'll see that the original will be in here, and that's here, untouched. And then we have the one that we cropped and we made different. This one says 002 JPEG. This says fox.tiff. Okay. Now, if I'm all done with this image and it's perfect and I don't need to do any more adjustments, I already saved my TIFF, I go back into File, Save As, and what do I save it as? JPEG. So I'm going to go down and save it as a JPEG. Say Save. Now this one's going to come up with image options here. Usually we want to go high, and you can go somewhere here for a large file. Okay, it doesn't have to be maximum, but somewhere around there, high, and say OK. Now when I go back to that folder, in here I'll have 3 guys in here now. Okay, so I have my original, I have my fox.tiff with all of the changes and the layers and the JPEG. Now, I'm going to go in here and close these down and show you something here. Okay, so if I come in here and I open the fox.tiff with Photoshop, I can right click and say what to open it with too. Okay, so I have him here. And I've opened it in Photoshop, and you see the layers are still here. See all these layers? So I can still go back in and adjust these if I want to. Okay, I can still go back in and adjust them if I want to. I have no idea why my computer is so slow. So I can adjust them at any time. Now I can close out of that because I didn't do anything to it. So I don't need to save it because it's already saved once. But if I go in and I open now, going on here. I'm going to open the one that says Fox JPEG. That looks exactly like the TIFF one because we saved it from that one. But the difference here is that if you come over to the layers palette, it only has one layer. You guys see that? It has only one layer. So we cannot adjust anything in the JPEG layers. We cannot adjust anything in the JPEG layers. All right? So that's how we bring a picture into Photoshop, how we adjust it. That's all the adjustments I want you to do right now. I know some of you know how to do other things, but I want you to only do these things for the 2 that I want you to do by Monday, by the end of the period on Monday. Okay, questions on that? All right, I cannot get into here. I'm trying to turn my recorder off, but this is down here and I can't get it off.